Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video. Today's video is featuring some products from Picket. So this is my Graceful Magnolia stamps and dies, which released a few months ago. This one is called Southern Magnolias and is my first ever background stamp. So I'm very excited about that. Here, Picket has a lot of great like bolder or larger sentiments that are die cuts. That's what you're going to want for this kind of like 2-for-1 technique we're going to do today. I ended up going with the happy birthday. Obviously, we're starting a new year. Happy New Year. And so I need to start replenishing my birthday cards because those are the ones that I really like use, truthfully. So here, rather than peeling off the background stamp and then worrying about, getting it kind of lined up or lined up back on its backer sheet, I do like to put a little bit of adhesive on the back of the acetate sheet. And then I can pick that up with my Misty Door. And then once I'm done stamping, I just remove that little bit of adhesive, either with an adhesive eraser or with a Gooby Gone. Either one of them will work. So here I am inking up with Picket black ink. This is safe for alcohol markers, and that is how I'm going to be coloring my images today. And then I'm using Nina 80-pound solar white cardstock. I do with background stamps, I like to stand up and give it really good pressure. You could also stamp it multiple times. I do typically tend to stamp mine twice because I like a bolder black outline, but that's true of all my images. Here I've pulled out the images from the Graceful Magnolia. I'm going to use these in conjunction with the background stamp. So you can use them separately or you can use them together. Picket Fence, because this Southern Magnolias is part of the latest release, for a limited amount of time, they do have a bundle that includes the background stamp, the Graceful Magnolias, and the dies for 10% off. So if you're like, oh, I love them, I'm from the South, I love magnolia trees, or I know some of you guys, which I love you for, collect like my stamp sets, I'd rather have you be able to get it at a discount. So when I sat down to color these, it's been a long time since I've really given my Olo markers some love. And I wanted to, part of my goals last year, which I didn't do great at, I'll be honest, was to get a little bit more comfortable with the other types of markers that I have, because I know not everybody has Copics. And I am very comfortable with my Copics. So when I am picking out colors for my cards, I do exactly what I just showed you there. With the Copics, I know the combinations already because I've used them for so many years. With the Olos, I do just have to take a little bit more time selecting my colors and seeing if they'll work together. But I know if I just stick with it, eventually this will also become kind of old hat information that I just know. And I do want to say that I have the full set of the Olo markers. So right now, I think the first one that they released, like they had collections 1, 2, and 3, and I think they're like 60 some markers in each one. I think mostly I stuck to collection 1 and 2, but I do also need to get better about listing them individually. So I'm a work in progress. I'll try to do that. So let's talk about the easiest way to kind of color these types of background images. There's other way to use them besides coloring, and we'll talk about that too, but I am coloring mine today, so let me give you some tips on that. First, I like to go through and pick out all my colors, which you saw. Then from there, I like to just start with one thing. So for me, it was the centers of the magnolias, and I went through and I colored all of those. Here, I'm using the same browns that I did for the centers, but I'm not going out to a yellow. I'm staying with the browns. And then I'm going through and I'm finding all of the branches. Magnolias grow on trees, so they grow on branches. So there will be some brown, tree branches in there. So that is what I am looking for so that I can color those as well. And then from there, I'll move on to the flowers. And then I think the last one I did was the leaves. So breaking it down like that helps it to be easier for me to locate what everything is when there's so much going on. Alternatively, you could also do what I call color mapping, which is where you just kind of start in one quadrant, like top left, and you take the lightest color that you'll be using and you just start filling in everything as you're going. So all of the flowers would be filled in like light pink. All of the branches would be filled in light brown. All of the leaves light green. And that kind of maps everything out for you so you're not having to go through and struggle to find all of the bits and constantly opening and closing all of your markers, which I feel like is a gigantic waste of my time, and I'm very impatient because I don't always have that much time to craft. So here I colored my magnolias a little bit differently. So I think we've all seen the more magenta magnolias. We've all seen the white, and then the white with a little bit of pink. These, I really wanted to do something different. So I started by getting into Google and doing a little bit of searching for what colors they come in. And I found these ones, they're called Coral Lake Magnolias, and they are a peachy pink kind of color. And so that's what I went with today. And I have to tell you guys, I love them. Like, I love this color combination. I think it's super pretty. You'll have to tell me what you guys think. So originally I went in with the corals, and I only chose 3. I will end up choosing a 4th just because I felt like I wasn't getting as much dimension as I wanted. So you'll see that when I added in, I tried to be better because I have just the half markers, about leaving the cap on the screen so that you could see what I was using instead of holding it in my hand. And honestly, I was about 50-50 on this. I was not great about it, but I was better. What does Gina K say? Better than horrible. I was better than horrible. So please know that when I am using these particular, like the color combinations that I am showing you, I'm typically using all 4 of them, and then I am moving over and switching to, like in this case, I'm doing the darkest parts pink. So then once I get out to the lightest color, I will then switch over to the peachy kind of pinkish reds, and I'll only use the lightest 2 colors. So I hope that makes sense. I am not going to show you the coloring of every single one of these flowers in the background, because it's pretty much everything the same. It's the things that we always talk about where 2 objects meet, we add shading, and where one lays on top of the other, we add shading. So anytime one of your leaves is laying over, or one of your petals is laying over another petal, you would add shading. Where one of your petals is laying over a leaf, there would be darker shading. There's also little buds in here, as well as I guess they're still buds. They're like little baby buds, that are, coming off the branches. So, those are in here as well. I tried to include at least one of each of all of the things, so that way there wouldn't be any question about like how to color each type of flower. But I did not leave the coloring of all of them in. I'm sure you can, see that some of these florals are repeated throughout the pattern. So this is my first background stamp, and I'm actually hoping, to be able to do some more in the future. But I originally did this background. This is, I always think it's interesting to hear like kind of the origin story of things. And originally, when I did this background, it was not to be a stamp. I was actually looking into doing kind of some like merchandise and things like that. More like, print on demand type things. So, like doing phone cases or doing t-shirts or just other types of things that maybe I might want to dabble in as an illustrator. And so this one I originally drew, it was my first successful repeating pattern. Because I had been trying to do a repeating pattern for quite some time and I could not, I just couldn't get it where it was all lining up and everything, you could just repeat it as many times as you needed to. And so I was having a really, really hard time with it. And you know me, I tell you guys all the time with coloring, with anything, like practice, practice, practice. You're only going to get better at it and you're never going to succeed if you quit. Like it will always be a failure if you never go back and try again. The beauty and the growth and the feeling of success is found in the trying. And so I kept trying and I just could not get it. And so I think this was my fourth one that I did. And it was the first one that I actually got it so that it worked and I could repeat it. And I was so thrilled about it. I was so excited about it. And because I was so excited, very much like you guys, I'm sure, like when you're excited about a card that you make or, how something just comes together, like you probably have, if you have crafty friends. For a long time, I didn't have any crafty friends. I had nobody to share my things with. But now I do. Now I have crafty friends. But like I take a picture of it and I share it with my crafty friends because I'm like super thrilled. So when I was super excited and I shared it with my friends at Picket Fence, they were like, hey, can we use this as a background stamp? So because this is a full like A2 size, it is not a repeating pattern anymore because it's not a square. Only a square can be a repeating pattern. But I do think, not to toot my own horn, I think it's a really pretty background. And because it's does have the same type of imagery that we see in the Graceful Magnolias, they obviously they're not exactly the same. They're similar. I drew them all in the same kind of time frame. But because of that, they work really, really nicely together. And I think that when you have a full background like this, like you don't have to color it. So even if you're a person who you're like, girl, this is beautiful and I can appreciate that, but like, not for me. I'm not going to sit down and color all that stuff, which I totally understand. I do, because even I, as a colorist who really enjoys it, like some days I just don't have enough time in the day to do something like this. So here the background is done colored. We are going to move on to these larger images, and I'm just going to show you two of the flowers because we've just looked at all of the leaves and things like that. So you've seen that, you've seen the branches, but the, what am I saying? The color combination. So the small one on the left is going to have the base pink, and then the tips, that peach color. The one on the right is going to have the base peach and the tips pink. So anywho, I I don't think you have to color it. So I think that you can stamp it and you could just like abstract watercolor over it, and that would be really pretty. You could stamp it and ink blend over top of it. You could do an emboss resist. So emboss it, add some watercolor over it, or add some ink blending over top of it. You could just emboss it over some colored cardstock, and that would be really striking. I do that a lot for like monochromatic cards, and those make a great card set. Like if you're, wanting to give a gift, finding a more intricate, detailed kind of background stamp or, imagery, and then stamping that into the background and putting a sentiment on it. Like you could do those all different colors, and that would be a beautiful set with some envelopes and things. So there's lots of different things that you can do with a background stamp. My favorite one outside of this one, which is like the 2-for-1 technique, because I'm all about more bang for my buck, you guys know that, is probably the watercolor, and then adding some shading with my alcohol markers right over top of that. I think are probably my two go-to for backgrounds. And I love this color scheme. Like my wedding colors were navy and coral. So so no big surprise that is the way that I end up going with this card. And it does feel a little bit more like spring, but I feel like it feels very just soft and pretty and like really great in do I have any? January is my best friend's birthday, but then like February, we start to get into a lot more birthdays for my family. So like these are ones I'll already have in my stash that I can use, because I'm sure like a lot of you, I am not only the supplier of my own birthday cards, but I am also the supplier of my family's birthday cards. So like when they need a birthday card, sympathy card, congratulations card, or whatever, they come shop Kelly's Boutique. And the only reason that they're organized is because my oldest sister very lovingly comes over here and organizes them into bins. Otherwise, I would just have them stacked up in the corner. That's not a dramatization. They literally just stack up in this tray in the corner and sit until I have to go through them to find a card I need. So here, both of them are done. They're colored completely. I'm using the coordinating dies for the Graceful Magnolias to cut those out. And then I am also using, remember in the beginning we talked about any of those kind of larger word sentiments, dies will work. I am using the Happy Birthday set. And so I am going to, you could do this as a horizontal card or a vertical. I'm choosing to do mine as a vertical. I'm going to line that up, and this just says happy, and then I will tape it in place to cut it through my background. You do want to keep track of all of your pieces parts in order to do the 2-for-1 technique. You'll need all of the pieces. So don't get rid of any of them. You'll need them all, including the middle of the 2 P's and the A. And then I am also going to cut the birthday. I'm going to cut it out of a white, and I'm going to cut it out of coral. Same thing with the happy. I'm going to cut that a couple more times out of white and out of coral. Here I have my navy cardstock. What is this actually? Indigo from Spellbinders, I think. And then so I just put it up against my Olos and try to find the closest color to what matches. Sometimes I do have to layer different colors over top to get a good match, but that's true of my Copic markers as well. So here I am laying them out, finding my coral here. You guys can see how much of a cheap chicken I am. I colored that with a whole other different stamp set. I think it was poppies. Is that what it looked like to you? I think that's what it was. And I didn't end up using it. So I just flipped it right over and started using my die cutting out of the other side because your girl is frugal. So I did trim down my colored panel just a little bit so that it would have a navy border. And then after you guys saw me, color in that whole background, just because I feel like it helps the flowers kind of pop and sends the background to the background. But for the happy that we're going to use on the other card, I did not color that. I cut it out when it was white, and I'm going to keep it white. So here, pulling out the coral ones as well as the white ones we die cut, and then I will stack them so that they will just sit a little bit raised, and not so much that like we're going to have it hand canceled in the mail, but enough that it gives it a different height and adds a little bit of interest. So once I glue them to each other, then I will glue them into the background. I do just want to note one thing. If you want your happy on your other card to be super easy to line up, do this card second, because you can use the negative, like the leftover, to line up the happy on the other card. And normally that is what I do. I guess I was just so excited to put it together, I didn't think about that. So I have another trick for kind of getting them all spaced properly, even if you don't have the negative. But I just wanted to let you know that your life could be much easier. So here, this is the birthday that I cut out of the coral. I'm stacking that on top of one of the whites, so they have a little bit more weight. And for the birthday on the background card, I stacked two of them together. They're just two whites as well. And I use my tweezers to aid in that. So, yeah, it's been, I hope you guys had a happy and healthy new year. I think I told you recently in another video, here, I did add a little bit of a shadow next to my happy because I felt like it was kind of blending into the background. I used one of the cool grays, I think 5. I think it was number 5 for the Olos, just to help get a little bit of separation from the background. You could always go darker, and it would really separate it, but I was just trying just a little bit. And then here is that white birthday. Anywho, I told you guys in a recent video that my parents have the flu, and I was in close quarters with my mom when I was taking her to the ER. And so I was like, send a little prayer up for their health and to make sure I don't get it. I don't know if I avoided it. I'm a little bit like, I have a sore throat today. I sound a little bit congested. I have been drinking the emergency and taking the airborne and all of that. So hopefully it's not as bad as it could be if I do have it. But it just seems like everybody is. It's just like the flu is going around, just like everybody is sick right now. So I hope that you are healthy in your new year. And if you are sick, that it is mild and treatable and you're back on your feet in no time at all. So here for this one, I chose to do a horizontal card. You could absolutely, still do a vertical card with this. I just thought it would be interesting to show it another way. And so I did my arranging, and I don't want to have to color 2 of these. Remember, we go back to when I tell you like that I'm frugal and I'm impatient. I don't want to have to color a whole nother one. So I'm going to use my scissors to trim these off so that I have a piece in the bottom right hand corner. And then I am going to use my leftover pieces as well as that top flower to create a corner piece up in the top left with the same thing, and nobody will be any the wiser. So I've glued that down, and then I'm going to trim that off. and then I'll use, again, the leftover piece. I didn't end up using the branch part of it, but the bigger flower, I did use that, and then my extra flower and leaf will kind of bring the whole thing together to make it look like it's supposed to be there. And then from there, we can, fill in the middle with that happy birthday. So here, everything is glued down. I'm going to go ahead and use this one, pointing down in the bottom left, and then I will slide that little leaf up under the other flower to help it look like a fuller corner. And then anything that's hanging off on that side, I will also trim off. And then we'll work on the putting down the sentiment. Here's the trick for these. If you don't, I did color in the edges, just like the other one, how I colored in the background navy. For this one, I just colored in the white, with the different peaches and green. Like if it was laying on a leaf, I colored it green. If it's laying on the navy, I colored it with the navy so that it would blend into the background, so that the sentiment was the only portion that had the white, and it would help it kind of stand out. So the trick for adhering these down, if you're not using the negative, is to find the middle of the word and adhere that letter first. So for me, I have happy, Happy. So the first P is the middle of the word. And so by gluing that one down and then working my way to the right and the left, I can assure that it's going to be centered. Also, I eyeballed it, but you could put a ruler at the bottom to make sure all of your bottoms are lining up accordingly. So if you do what I did and get overexcited and use the other piece first, that's okay. Use those other two tricks to make sure everything is lined up. If it does not work for you, then make it intentionally cattywampus. So make it intentionally at different levels or different angles. It helps make it look a little bit more playful, and you don't have to sweat about it not being perfectly laid out. So this one, the birthday, was a little bit hard to read, and so I tried to make it a little bit easier to read by giving it a shadow. I'm not really sure if I was successful with this or if it made it harder. I think in real life it makes it easier, but on the camera it makes it a little bit harder. But anyway, I used a white gel pen to just give it a shadow, the birthday portion, and help it kind of come off the page. The last step was adding some clear shimmer to the flowers, and then this is it. This is both cards. So I hope that you love the new background stamp. I hope that you see lots of uses for it and you're inspired by the technique. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.